Hello everyone, and welcome to the next edition, I believe this is now episode 5 of This Week in Oakland. Interestingly enough, we started off episode 4 interviewing Peter Markoulis, talking about his sculpture Swords to Plowshares. So I figured, why not check it out myself? So I'm here right now at Great Oak Park, right in front of the statue that Peter Markoulis did. If you didn't get a chance to see the interview, highly recommend that you watch episode 4 or take a trip to Great Oak Park in Oakland for yourself to see it. So while we're on the outdoors, nature type theme, we actually caught up with a local veterinarian, Dr. Alan Pomerantz, and his hobby of bird watching.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Alan Pomerantz. I am a local veterinarian. I've been living in Oakland nearly 20 years, and about 5 years ago, when kids all went off to college and left the house, my wife and I moved to the Rampo River Reserve and have really enjoyed it. In the beginning, I spent a lot of time walking the trails by myself and then also with my dog. And over time, I've really got an appreciation for nature. I mean, I've always loved nature and the outdoors, and about 5 years ago, I purchased a camera which allowed me to combine both my love of photography and the outdoors, and it somehow morphed into mostly taking pictures of birds, and then I became more and more interested in bird watching. Bird watching became really easy for me, and having a nice backyard overlooking the woods allowed me to set up some bird feeders, and so I have a constant supply of birds to see, and really no necessity for me to go out and look, although it's really something I enjoy almost every day. Living in the reserve is great because there's multiple types of environments for birds to live and thrive, and we have a river, we have a beautiful lake, which is where I am this morning, we have trees and forests and open fields, and those different habitats allow different kinds of birds. The last 8 weeks we've been home with the COVID-19. Getting out and walking in the woods has kept me sane every day, and really has been wonderful for seeing lots of new birds in Bergen County. This time of year is ideal. The leaves are small or none, 8 weeks ago. The birds are beginning to migrate and head north, and I've seen lots of new ones, and hopefully we'll figure out how to share some of those photographs into this talk as well. Birding can be a very inexpensive hobby. That's what I tell my wife often. But it can start off very simply as a bird feeder hanging out your window with some seed, or even with some nectar in the summer for hummingbirds. Having a great book is also key to help with identification. The classics include the Sibley Guide, the Peterson Guide, but I actually like using some really small specific ones just for New Jersey. That way you're not parsing through hundreds of birds, just the local 50, which is probably what you'll mostly see. In addition, there's some great free apps. There's one called Merlin, which allows you to identify the bird by the size, color, and habitat. It also allows you to upload photos and then identify it for you. So for that part, it's great. There's another one called eBird that helps keep track of what birds you've seen where, and it also then creates a national database that allows other birders to see what birds that were seen in your area. Other important piece of equipment is a pair of binoculars. Mine that I love so much are relatively inexpensive. They were about $100 or so, You can go up to several thousand, but for between 100 and 1,000 you can get a really nice set, and it's important to have a good pair because most of the time you're looking at birds that are pretty far away. In addition, I've upped my equipment, and I've purchased a relatively new camera and a lens, and that has allowed me to get some really beautiful photos, which hopefully will get shared through the show. Can I mention Ryan's name? Hopefully Ryan will get it on there appropriately. Also, another great piece of equipment, is finding a birding buddy to go out and see birds with, especially if you're starting off. And Bergen County Audubon meets twice a week and goes for birding walks year-round, in the cold, in the snow, in the rain. You don't have to go on all of them or any of them during the week, on the weekends. And there are also other birding groups. The Celery Farm in Allendale has a group called the Fike Nature Preserve, or Fike Group, and they're all about birds, and there's some other beautiful wildlife there. In Oakland, besides the reserve, we also have Potash Lake, Rampo Lake, and close by we also have the Rampo Mountain and Camp Gaw parks, which are really great places for birds. We're starting to talk about some places to go birding, and I just want to emphasize that Bergen County is a fabulous place because of the habitats that we have. I mean, all the way out to the west we have mountains, the Rampo Mountains, and then all the way to the east we have the ocean and large rivers like the Hudson. So some great places are for shorebirds besides all the beaches in New Jersey, but in Bergen County we have the Court Park, which has a lot of beautiful wading birds, a lot of ospreys, eagles, other things along the Hackensack River. And then we also have in Alpine, the Palisades, which sit hundreds of feet above the Hudson and is a great place to watch raptors like hawks and eagles. And during the spring and fall, the AIVA migration goes up and down the river, and there are people there every day keeping track of the birds and acting as good stewards to teach people about them. So that's a great place to go in Alpine, the New Jersey Hawk Watch. Oh, behind us there goes a couple of cormorants, popular water bird that lives on eating mostly fish. They're pretty popular in New Jersey. You can see quite a bit of them. In addition, New Jersey is on the Atlantic Flyway, which is essentially the turnpike for birds that goes from Canada all the way down to the Central America and even more south. So every spring and every fall the migration is on, and right now we're nearing the mid to end of the spring migration with everybody coming north, and the birding has just been terrific. Cape May is considered one of the top 5 birding places in the whole world, and it's only a couple-hour drive, so there's lots of opportunities. Anywhere from just sitting on your couch and looking out the window to traveling all over New Jersey and also throughout the rest of the world. This is a hobby that's really interested me and caused me to have many hours of research, relaxation, fun, and I think it's something that is easy for everybody. I think the recent statistics say about 15 to 20% of all Americans consider bird watching as part of one of their hobbies. And if it's not yours, you should consider it, because it's a great way to spend a little bit of time every day and get in touch with nature. And I think nature is important because we're nature, and what happens to the rest of the world is also going to happen to us. Rampo River is a great place. Just got to take pictures of cormorant. Double-crested cormorant just went by and we were able to catch it. So over the last couple of years I've found great birds down in here. Not only the swimming birds like cormorants and mergansers, all kinds of ducks like wood ducks and mallards, but also hawks. And one day I was fishing down here with and happened to have my camera with me. I put my rod down because it got a little slow, and about a minute later a bald eagle flew right by me. Unfortunately I was able to get a photo of him, but it was really quite a surprise. I've also seen bald eagles fly up and down throughout the reserve. They are really a great comeback that's happened since the DPT days of the 70s. And there's bald eagles all over Bergen County that you can find. But the river creates its own habitat for lots of water birds, and there are birds that nest along the side of it, especially those kind of birds that eat flies primarily, or flying insects. We see this morning I saw quite a few swallows out along the top of the river trying to get the hatch and get varied habitat, varied birds. Really terrific.
Now we go over to Andrea Levy for our fun cooking segment. Actually, this one's more of a baking segment, as we're going to look at crumble bars. Let's see how they're made.
Today we're going to make a version of a great recipe from AIVA Garden, which is a raspberry crumble bar, but I happen to do it with a plum jam instead, and it's really, really good. So what we'll need for today is sugar, butter, vanilla, flour, kosher salt, some good jam, any flavor will do, granola. If you don't have granola and you have oats, you can make granola, or any crunchy cereal. That will go good with the jam that you have, will go great. And then we also use sliced almonds. You can leave those out or add different nuts, maybe pecans or walnuts, confectioner's sugar. And it would be terrific if you have a mixer to make things so much easier for yourself. All right, so today we're gonna make crumble bars. Hi, my name is Andrea, and I am going to make a really good dessert with you today. We're trying to use things that we have in the house already. I'm really getting down to a bare minimum, as I know many of you are out there. So we're gonna make crumble bars. It's a takeoff on AIVA Garden's recipe, which is really awesome. I happen to have plum preserve, so that's what we're doing today, is plum crumble bars. All right, so first we're going to start with our butter. So we have 2 sticks of unsalted room temperature butter, and you really don't want cold butter for this because it'll make it very difficult for you to mix together your sugar, which is going to come next. So we've got our 2 sticks of butter going in. The next thing we're going to do is put in 3/4 cup of our white sugar. Means our oven, which we set to 350, is now at temperature. You always want to get that ready ahead of time. All right, so we said we wanted 3/4 cup of sugar, which I'm going to use my 1/4 cup guy because I can't fit in the larger one. So now 1, 2. All right, so that is 3 cups, All right, so we put 3/4 cup of white sugar in our bowl with our softened butter, and now we're gonna mix it together. Maybe. I am not a pro at using my little gadgets here. I really don't use them all that often, to be honest, but they are fun. All right, so let's get this one locked and ready to roll. All right, so let's put this on about medium speed will do. I think that's good. And we're just trying to cream it a little bit so it's nice and smooth. And then we're gonna take our vanilla, and we will put in 1 teaspoon of our vanilla. All right. There we go. We got a teaspoon of vanilla in there. And let's take a look and see how it's doing. All right, then the next thing we're going to do is put our flour. You can actually stop it. All right, so now what we're gonna do is sift our flour and salt, and it's gonna go into the creamed butter. All right, so we're gonna take our flour, just white, unbleached flour, or any flour that you have in the house at this point will do. We're gonna do 2 1/3 cup of the flour. So let's take this, I think it's a little wet. Let's try it out there. And 1. And then 2. And I got a 1/3 here somewhere. There we go, there's our 1/3. So we got 2 1/3 cups of our flour, and then we're gonna put in our salt. Anybody remember how much salt we needed? 1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt. All right, and so let's grab our 1/2 teaspoon. My salt is right here. That's what happens when I'm too organized, then I really can't find what I need. All right, so now what we're gonna do is sift it into here. Just open this up a little bit just to get it started, because otherwise it's just gonna be a mess. So just wanna get a little bit going in there. All right. Of course I'm making a mess because I didn't put anything underneath it. And I know all you pros out there are laughing at me because I am not good with my little doohickeys here. But I will tell you, I make a really good crumble bar. My sons will tell you, they'll eat the entire 9x13 will disappear because they like it so much. All right, so we're just gonna get that going a little bit. And again, because I don't wanna, I can try to get it in here. I'm not very good at this. Get it all over the place. How much am I getting in? All right, so we mixed the butter and the sugar and the vanilla until it just comes together like a dough, and we're gonna take it out of here and form a ball with this and then split it up. Okay. Turn it right onto my surface here. It's already pre-cleaned, ready to roll. There. All right. So I'm going to take off about 1/3 of this, which is going to end up being my topping. And the remainder I'm going to put into my dish. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take, typically I'd use a 9x9 pan. This one is, I think, a little bit smaller than that. And then we're gonna push the dough down so we can start to make our crust, which basically is just going to fill the bottom of the pan and get to about 1/4 inch or so up the sides. And you just keep pressing along, pressing along, pressing along. You'll neaten it up in the end. And just keep pressing it down. You can double this recipe. It does double really well. And as far as a dessert goes, it really flies off the table really well too. And it's very portable. So it's a nice dessert to bring with you when you're going over to somebody's house for an event, or if you have something going on. It's a good dessert. I will tell you that the Flo Follies crew, one of our members makes this and brings it in, and invariably it disappears in a matter of minutes because it really is a great little dish. All right, so see how I'm kind of making my way around, and I'm trying to even out the edges a tiny bit. But what you really want to make sure of is that your surface on the bottom is even, because you don't want uneven crust, you want it very even. So just, kind of feel your way across, keep tightening it up, evening it out. It may take you a few minutes, but not a big deal. And then once you get your crust where you like it, I'm almost there. I'm not a pretty baker. Nobody will ever tell me that what I bake looks really pretty. Because that's just not me. I'm not a crafty person. but tasty for sure. Tasty for sure. It's all about the taste for me. All right, I know everybody could do this so much better than I on the pretty front. I just was not gifted with those talents. Maybe it's patience, I don't know. But we're almost about there. I'm just trying to making it as neat as I can. Not that it'll last any more than a few minutes once it's baked, because once my son gets wind of it, that's it, it's over. All right, so look at that. Look what we have. Lovely crust made of butter and sugar and vanilla. It's gonna taste great. All right, so we're gonna take our crumble bars and we're gonna put them in our preheated oven at 350 for about 40 minutes. And there we go. Set my timer. And we'll check in and back in 40 minutes or so. All right, so about 40 minutes has gone by and we have taken our, not really raspberry, plum crumble bars out of the oven. And you may have seen, I started to put the sugar on. Whoops, I'm making a little mess here. I'm just gonna sprinkle it on a little bit. Get the powdered sugar. And this is just so easy, and I know somebody who's been waiting all day to eat this. Get a little more on there. I really want to cover it pretty good here. And the crust is it's hard. It's almost like a shortbread type of crust. Alrighty, great. And then what we're gonna do after I made my little mess there is slice through. It's pretty hard, but it comes apart really nicely. And then we'll do, I think, we'll do 4. Start in the middle here. Oh, see how hard that is now? But it goes through and it doesn't fall apart, which is nice. And as I said before, I don't make things pretty. I can't get things to be straight. That's just me. But that's okay. It'll still taste awesome. Oh, there it goes. That's what I wanted. Beautiful. All right, so we're just gonna take that out. And it's good, you can see what it looks like on the inside. And we'll take a little bite. See if I can do it without getting messy. It is really good. It's kind of like a Linzer tart a little bit, but with the nuts and the granola on top, it adds a nice little crunch. And the outside is crunchy as well. Like I said, it's kind of a shortbread crust, and then a little bit soft underneath. It really is a great dessert. It's super easy to make, and as some of our friend chefs have said, bon appetit. Thank you.
Up next, Councilman Grant Van Eck interviews the Planning Board Chairman, Tom Potash. And we're going to learn a little bit about what the Planning Board does and some of the things that you might be familiar with in town related to the Planning Board.
Hello, everyone. I am Councilman Grant Van Eck, and I am the liaison to the Planning Board. And I have the privilege to be interviewing today our chairman, Tom Potash. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Grant. Pleasure to be here.
We'll get right into it. We'd love to know what the Planning Board is and what the Planning Board does.
Well, the Planning Board is established by the New Jersey Municipal Land Use Law. So every town in New Jersey is governed by the same law, and it basically sets up 3 bodies that are responsible for land use. You have the governing body, which is the mayor and council, and they're responsible for all the zoning ordinances, which is really the Bible that we have to go by. Every landowner has to abide by the zoning ordinance. And then 2 other bodies, we have the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Adjustment. The Planning Board is considered the board of permitted activities. So in other words, usually if you're going in front of the board, the planning board, with an application, the use is permitted, and generally the application conforms to what the property is zoned for. And the planning board also has other activities as well. We plan. We're responsible for the master plan of the borough. We're responsible to review all of the ordinances, the zoning ordinances that come in front of the mayor and council. And then the third board is the zoning board of adjustment, and that's considered the board of non-permitted uses. So they hear applications for variances, generally speaking. And homeowners typically get in front of the zoning board when they want to put an addition on their house, or they want to put a deck on their house and it extends, say, into the setback too close to the property line. Maybe it covers too much of the property. But typically the zoning board handles applications where there are issues with violation of the zoning ordinance. So just to go into a little more detail on the planning board has 9 members and 2 alternates. The mayor is a member of the planning board. One of the council, and that's your position right now, is a member of the planning board. 1 borough official, which could be an employee of the borough. For instance, we had the building inspector, Dan Hagberg, for many years was a member of the planning board. He was a great member, recently retired. And then we have the balance of the 9 members are filled out by citizens, regular citizens of the borough. And then there's 2 alternates who are also citizens of the borough. And that's what makes up the board. And then we usually meet once per month, and either we hear site plan applications, subdivision applications, or we're involved in planning with the master plan, or again, reviewing zoning ordinances. That's pretty much it.
Thanks, Tom. That was a great overview, as it's very intricate and a lot of detail. Having been sitting in a few of those meetings, becoming one of the members as your liaison, it's incredible the work that you're doing and the time that's put into it as well, and the fact that you're all volunteers, that nobody is getting paid for all the time that you're putting in. So
but
how did you?
The members, sorry to interrupt, but the members, they're not paid. But we also have, and I should have mentioned it, we have paid professionals that are part of the board. We have an attorney, who's a very important part, an engineer and a planner and a secretary. So they all have important functions to guide us through complicated law issues, engineering issues, planning issues, and they're a very important part of the board as well.
Great. Yeah, that's really informative. So how did you get involved and become chair? And if you'd like to inform our viewers, you do have some family history here in Oakland, so I'd love if you would share a little bit about your family's background and history in this community, and of course how you became our planning board chair.
Well, my grandfather came to the borough, my grandparents came to the borough in the 1920s. The population was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 or 500 people. And my grandfather became very involved in the borough very early on. Fire department, tax collector, board of education, various activities. He was very civic minded. And then he also started a construction business in the town, and which became James Construction Company, of which I'm currently one of the owners, a 3rd generation with my brother and 2 cousins. So my grandfather continued on, became a councilman, became mayor of the town, was mayor in the 1950s when the population probably tripled, and really all the main growth of the town occurred in the 50s. So I became involved in the board through the construction company, we wanted to expand our facilities in Oakland, and we had an application in the late 90s in front of the planning board, and I got very involved in that and was represented the company at the planning board meetings. And after the application was finished, the current mayor at the time, Pete Kendall, asked if I would be interested in serving on the board, and I said sure. And that was 22 years ago, and been there ever since. So, and enjoyed it, and have served with some really, really great members. I mean, when I started, I was young. I was the youngest person on the board, and I learned from very experienced, very good people that were on the board. Now I'm one of the old guys, and there's young people like yourself, and coming on the board that are tremendous members as well. So, yeah, it's been a very rewarding 22 years.
2 decades of service. Thank you, Tom. That's incredible, and it's wonderful hearing about your family history and the background. So you mentioned 22 years ago you got involved. The mayor asked you. So what type of volunteers are you looking for now? And how does someone get appointed onto the planning board? What's that process? And then a follow-up to that question would be, once you are on the board, what type of training is involved for a new member?
Well, for me, I mean, as far as looking for new members, okay, and what those new members, should have as far as talents. I mean, I don't think we're looking for, I think having a wide variety of people is really is the best thing. It makes for the best board. I happen to be an engineer and involved in construction and land development, so it's kind of a natural for me. But I think people from all walks of life on the board have really served the town the best, because you get all different viewpoints, and you want that. Now, how does a person get appointed to the board? It's strictly a mayor appointment. So the mayor makes the appointments to the board. They're 4-year terms. The alternates are 2-year terms, but the rest of the members are 4-year terms. And if you're interested, then you could reach out to me. You could reach out to the mayor. You could reach out to the board secretary. But right now the board is full. But there's people. People have to drop off, and terms expire at the end of the year, and we're always looking for new people. And as far as training, everybody is required by the state to pass a very brief course. I think it's a 4-hour course. The borough sets it up, our secretary will set it up for you. You go, you take the course, you take a little test at the end, and then you're certified. And that's all the training that's involved.
Thanks, Tom. With all your experience over these years, can you tell us about maybe a story or a particular instance of like the most interesting plan or some of the most interesting projects that you've seen in your tenure?
Well, some interesting projects. One that comes to mind would be the Ramapo River Reserve. We have many fine residents that live there today, but back before it was built, it was very controversial. It was a pristine piece of land. And this was happening when I first came on the board. There was a lot of controversy in town, a lot of environmental people against it. Ultimately, it's a 300-acre piece of property. I think it started at 200 acres, and it was owned by one of Oakland's most famous citizens, Sidney Kingsley, who was a playwright. Owned this beautiful piece of land, had a beautiful house on it. He became elderly, wanted to sell the property. A developer purchased the property, and immediately came to the town and said, look, it's zoned for 1 house per acre, but we want 2 houses per acre. And the town said, no, it's going to stay at 1. And the developer challenged it in court. Ultimately, we had to settle. He had some strong arguments, I guess. And he ended up buying another 100 acres. So it's 300 acres. and 300, I believe it's 375 total units on the property. So it's, the density is not 2 homes per acre. It's a little more than 1 home per acre. But I think, you know, the board tried to disturb as little of the property as possible. So that's why you see it so dense, but there's a lot of preserved property on the hillside that's untouched. So that was an interesting application. The Walgreens shopping center, everybody's familiar with that. Everybody complains about the traffic flow there, and rightfully so. Just to explain what happened a little bit there. This is right after we had passed a new downtown improvement plan where we wanted to build the buildings closer to the street and make more of a downtown pedestrian-friendly type of development. And this was the first application that came in front of us after we came up with this new plan. So we were hoping to have buildings close to the street and parking behind, rather than looking at these big parking lots and then seeing buildings, you know, in the back of the parking lot. Like we have, let's say, not to pick on anybody, like the Oakland Hardware Shopping Center or the Copper Tree Mall. We didn't want that. So the problem is Walgreens and Starbucks, they don't want to be right on the street. They want parking in front of the building. So we kind of compromised there, and we've got parking in front of the buildings, but they're still relatively close to the street. And the whole, you know, and the mall, the shopping center has been great. It's been a success, the Walgreens, and it's great to have solid businesses like that, you know, because they stabilize the development. So, but anyway, it created maybe some traffic flow problems with the one-way streets, et cetera, that a lot of people complain about, including our current mayor. She reminds us almost every meeting that she doesn't like the job we did there. I mean, she jokes with us, but it's all taken well. But that one, and then a third one that I'll bring up briefly that most people don't even know about it. It's called New Jersey Capital Partners, and it's on It's a beautiful piece of property, about 50 acres on Breakneck Road, which is the road going to Wayne, the nursing homes there. You can just go past the nursing home as you're going to Wayne and look on the right, and it's all woods there. It's a nice piece of property. Developer wanted to build, if I remember, 25 to 30 homes on this 50-acre tract. He needed a variance. He needed a steep slope variance to get into the property. And the planning board decided that it was not going to give him that variance. Instead, they came up with an alternate way to get into the site, which would have disturbed less slope, but disturbed a lot more land and would have created a very bad situation with traffic and site distances and all. So it turned out the board denied the application and forced the property owner now to have no way to develop his property. And the courts then decided that, you know what, Oakland, if you're not going to permit him to access his property, he can't use it, you've got to buy it. And that costs the town a lot of money. So, you know, that was not one of the planning board's more finer moments, but at any rate, it is what it is.
That was very interesting. 3 great examples. Thank you for sharing. You know, on that same topic about, you know, different projects and plans, what is the board currently working on, and what ideas do you have for the future?
All right, currently we're working on a new downtown improvement plan. I said we did that, you know, right before the Walgreens application, but things have changed a little bit since then. That was probably 13, 14 years ago. So we're working on that. We're trying to improve that. We have a subcommittee of the planning board along with our planner that are working to develop a new plan. We've already had input from residents of the town. We want more input from residents. So that's one important thing we're working on. Another thing is that will be coming in front of the board, I can make everybody aware, is there will be a new proposed development off of McCoy Road behind the ball fields at Indian Hills, behind the football field and the baseball fields. There's a big area of woods that most people are probably familiar with. The planning board originally approved I think it was a 26 home subdivision on that piece of property. It's about 40 acres. It was never built. And the owner of the property recently challenged our affordable housing plans and forced the borough basically to agree to put affordable housing on that piece of property. So we're going to see, it looks like 200 units of housing on that 40-acre tract. And that's coming soon in front of the planning board, and it should be a challenging application for us.
Now that will be an interesting challenge. I look forward to hearing about it myself. What are some of the most recently approved projects? I mean, so just since I joined the board as a councilman this year, I saw two really interesting projects come forward and approved. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that, since that'll be some new construction in town?
Right. The one was a new office building in the Oakland Industrial Park, which was a nice application. It needed very minor variance, and it's a nice business. It's a medical supply business, which is good because that helps our ratables. That helps to lower our very high tax rate that we all have to pay. In the industrial park, we've recently had some buildings become tax exempt. There's two schools that are nonprofit schools, so we lose the tax rateable on those. And we also have a Sikh temple in the park, and we get no rateable on that as well. I mean, they're all great neighbors, and we're happy to have them all, but it does cost us in tax. So this was a nice addition. The other one was the former Burger King property. We recently approved a little shopping center there. I think it'll be very nice. I'm hopeful we'll be able to attract some good tenants. But I think the developer submitted a nice set of plans, and hopefully that's going to be a good positive addition to Oakland. We won't have to look at the old Burger King falling apart anymore. Hopefully that'll get started pretty soon.
Yeah, I found it really interesting how the way the board looks at the projects, and there's a lot of deliberation, there's a lot of questions, and to the architects and to the project managers, and I just think that the board did a great job. And I found it was interesting that not everybody agreed. It wasn't particularly the Burger King property. It wasn't a unanimous vote, which I really respect that diversity of thought. And you mentioned that earlier, that what's nice to have such a varying group of experienced people on the board coming together. So that's really good.
Right.
If you'd like any final thoughts, or if you're interested in elaborating on anything you may have touched on, maybe some of our viewers may not understand what a variance is or what ratables are, you could go into that, or just share any final thoughts you may have. And please give us the best way that a viewer who is interested in some of what you're doing, what's the best way that they can get in touch with you?
Okay. If I didn't explain variance properly, I apologize. To us, it's just like, normal language. But a variance is any time you're deviating from the zoning ordinance. So I think I used an example, like in a residential home, you need to be a certain distance from each property line, from your front yard property, from your side yard property. So if you're putting on an addition and you're getting closer than, say, whatever the zoning ordinance happens to say for your particular area of town, if you're within a certain, if it says 15 feet from the property line and you want to put your deck to within 10 feet of the property line, that triggers a variance. So that's a variance. A rateable, again, I think most people understand, is how we calculate our property taxes. Our homes all have a certain value attached to them, an assessed value. So does a business, and the more of those that we have, especially if they're business properties and have the businesses pay, more of a higher percentage of the taxes, then that helps the residents of the As far as if anybody has any questions or about anything going on, our meetings are once a month, and we have an open to the public session, just like the mayor and council have. You can get up and ask questions at the beginning of the meeting about anything. It doesn't have to be anything on the agenda, or you can come out when we do have something on the agenda and ask questions about that. So we invite the public to come out and ask. You can also contact the planning board secretary, Mariella Castro, is our secretary. We also have Kathy Gurney, who's the assistant to our borough administrator. She's actually is our secretary at the meetings. You can contact her, or the mayor, or myself. And be happy to answer anybody's questions.
Thank you, Tom. When is the next meeting? I know the meeting for May has been postponed. What is the plan right now? Do you have plans to have a meeting in June or July?
Our meetings are typically the second Thursday of the month. So our next meeting is scheduled for the second Thursday in June. And right now, we plan to have the meeting. So it just depends on where the health situation is going and what the governor's telling us and whether we'll be able to meet or not. Currently, the planning board, there's not a lot of pressing issues in front of the board. So we were able to cancel our last two meetings without costing anybody a delay or any problem. So we just simply cancel them. But we also have the option to do a Zoom meeting, like some of the other boards are having. So if we need to do that, we can do that. We're trying to avoid that because, especially with an application in front of the board where there's usually a lot of presentation and you need to see drawings, and we're hoping we don't have to do that online.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate your service. We're grateful to your service to this community for so many years, and for you taking the time to do this interview and have the viewers get to know you a little bit more and get to know what the planning board has been up to and what their plans are for the future. So very grateful for having you, and have stay safe out there, stay healthy.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, Grant. Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
And finally, on this episode of This Week in Oakland, we catch up with Jerry Angermuller, who is showcasing her collection of old toys. So for young kids or parents or grandparents alike, this might interest you to see some toys from the not-so-distant past, and also see some toys that might have been played by kids in Oakland many years ago.
So here's a small collection of toys and gadgets which people have used in the past when they were stuck at home, perhaps just because of the weather or any condition which would keep you at home. So when they're still good today as they were years ago, some people, and they are from different time periods. So we have something like a Rubik's Cube, which is called Mega Max, which is based on this little gadget, which maybe was started before the Rubik's Cube. It's just a board, and you can move the pieces, and you have to reassemble them in the way the picture is supposed to look. Like this is a picture of a Pan Am airplane, and you pass that out on the airplane. And you move the pieces around until you get them in the order of the picture. And the Mega Max is like similar to that, with a lot more surfaces to contain it. These are snow gliding shoes. They're not too old, but people used to have things like this when you're out in bad snow and had trouble walking. You had a blade and you could go zipping across the snow, not fall into it. And then, of course, here you recognize a jump rope, and this is a type of a yo-yo, which you spin until you can get it to spin back and forth. So it was an early type of yo-yo before today's yo-yo. And this is a whirligig. Okay. And this is our jumping jack. The sailors like to have the jumping jacks when they couldn't do much out on the ocean, but Jack could jump for them. This one was made by somebody down in the Newbridge Landing in River Edge. He made this To get the music going, they could watch Jack do his jig when they didn't have a chance to do it themselves. This is an example of a game that's been around for a long time. It's the game of ball and jacks. And it's very good for practicing hand-eye coordination. You see, the ball is a hard rubber ball that bounces well. And when we scatter the jacks, I'll give you a demonstration of how the game is played, whether you pick up one jack at a time, or two jacks, or three, all the way up to 10 at one bounce. So here are the jacks. I'm going to pass them out, and then I'm going to bounce the ball, and this is the onesie version here. I'm going to bounce the ball, pick up one jack, and catch the ball. Bounce it again, pick up one jack, and try and bounce the ball. Keep doing that until I miss. Before one bounces up, and then it's the next person's turn. And the second round, you pick up two jacks and try to count the ball. So that's really hard. You're not allowed to be touching the jack. So that would be a round of two jacks, and then you go to three jacks, and four jacks up to 10 at one catch. If you can do that, but it's a tough game. Okay, so here is a game that is bound to drive you crazy. This is a ball and cup game. So we've got a variety of different devices here. Very easy to make on your own. Here we went to a craft store. You might have something like this at home. This top is a wooden ring. It could be used as like a napkin holder. And we got a little disc too that was glued to the bottom. At the same time, you drill a hole in that disc and insert the string and a wooden stick. You take a long wooden stick and you cut it to the length you want, and then you put the string in and glue them together. And at the end of the string, you have your little wooden ball. So that's something maybe anybody can make if you need to have your parents help you make it. You also find some little wooden flower pots. They worked out also nicely with a little hole in the bottom and a string. And at the end of the string, you need a ball. Sometimes you get them with holes in the bottom. Sometimes you have to have somebody help you drill a hole through it. And then put the string through it. And glue that in place. So here we have a variety of them. So I can demonstrate how that works. Some of you have tried this when you've had open houses at the Van Allen house. It's not easy. So it's something that gets your hands and your eyes working. Here's a little try. Let's see how it works. I'll take 3 tries. I got it in on the first try. I have to practice. Let me try it again and see what happens. See, it's not always easy. Oh, there's 2 out of 3, so that's not bad. Okay. And this is an item which will be very strange to the younger generation, but a lot of us know from years ago here. This is a dial-up telephone, and it was even advanced in its age because it was connected to electricity. The early ones you had to wind up to make a bell ring, and we've had some Oakland history about that. But this here is a nice little princess phone that I have a model of, and this is what you call your dial me up sometime here. And that's what the kids are not used to these days.
Well, thanks again for joining us for another episode of This Week in Oakland. I enjoyed my trip out to Great Oak Park, and I hope one day I'll see you over there at Great Oak Park. Everyone should really take a nice trip over there. It's amazing what all the volunteers are doing and taking this piece of property and turning it into a nice legacy park for the town, of having a nice balance between some activity and leaving it all to nature as well. So, I want to remind you, as I always do, to make sure that you're staying in touch with the Borough of Oakland and everything that's going on. So make sure you're checking the Borough Facebook page, Twitter, and YouTube account. There's also SwiftReach, which you can sign up by going to the homepage of the Borough website, www.oakland-nj.org. There's a button right there on the homepage. Sign up for the SwiftReach 911 alerts. And you can make sure that anything that's going on in town that's an emergency, a special notice, you'll get it to your home phone and or even to your cell phone and email as well. And then, of course, make sure you subscribe to the Oakland newsletter, the Crossroads newsletter, as many of you maybe knew it previously. And you can do that on the Oakland Communications webpage. There's a button right at the top that says that you can click here in order to subscribe to the newsletter. So feel free to check that out. And that gets sent out once a month. And you'll be in the know of everything that's going on in terms of special events, news. There's some nice feature stories in there as well, and we highly recommend that you subscribe to that. But until we see each other again next time, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of This Week in Oakland, and we'll see you on the next This Week in Oakland.